Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our Round 2 live stream for the Valero Texas Open. Going to get you ready for all of your exposure tomorrow with a look at the weather, some of the strategy notes out there for a Friday. We'll go through any of your questions down there in the live chat, as well as a look at some of the stuff over there on DraftKings, including some of the contests available out there for Round 2 and how to handle some of your lineup construction. But any of those questions, any player deep dives that you are looking for to go out there and fill in the cracks, just let me know down there in the chat. We already got Go Collect down there, also Colin down there as well. So welcome on in. Hopefully you're having a fantastic Thursday. And it was a lot of fun watching the Jordan Spieth experience this afternoon. A few of the outright bets that I took up there in contention so far. So we'll have to see if we can keep that run good going. And you got wins a lot down there as well. Let's get after it out there for tomorrow. So first thing I like to focus on would be the course conditions, which today played slightly under par, which was to be expected with pretty calm conditions. And if we take a look at the morning versus the afternoon, it was about a 0.2 shot difference out there to the afternoon, which you heard Matt Every on the ESPN broadcast talk about why that was the case. And it was all about how far the golf ball was going. It was a lot warmer in the afternoon, went from about 70 to 90 degrees. And on top of the course just getting warmer out there, you also had it getting drier as the day went on. So in the morning, it's not like it played hard by any means. I mean, you still had your Keith Mitchell up there at -8, Ryan Harmon getting to a -6 round. It's just that you weren't getting that extra rollout that you had later in the day. Now, it's worth noting that about the mid part of the afternoon wave, it was actually playing closer to an entire stroke under par. But as we got to the latter sections of today, and as play finishes up, we still probably got another hour until they call play out there. This might even get closer to 50-50 by the time that we get to the end of the day. But what is worth noting is that the temperature made a slight difference, but the course also started to dry out. So it was even easier at one point this afternoon. But the reason why it's starting to come back down to earth a little bit is, at least in my opinion, due to the greens drying out. You had some iron shots starting to ricochet off greens towards the end of the day, which makes it a little bit harder to read the situation for tomorrow. And considering that this weather forecast looks nasty the entire day, I don't see any massive weather edge, because I mentioned the fact that you were getting extra distance over there in the PM. Well, if the golf course is drying out, like it looks like over there in the afternoon wave, it might not be that same way tomorrow, because if the fairways are going to be drier, you're maybe going to get those 10 to 15 extra yards off the tee. That advantage, that 0.2 shot advantage that we were looking at, could actually flip the other direction, right? If we just didn't have any wind out there tomorrow, let's say that it was a completely calm day out there for Friday, I would argue that the AM wave might actually play easier than the PM, because they're going to have more receptive greens than what you have in the afternoon. But the fairways and the greens are going to be dry enough to where it's not playing overly long. Now, the wind overly complicates it, right? You've got some wind over there tomorrow morning. Heck, even in the afternoon, you've got sustained winds and wind gusts. Pretty consistent out there the entire day. But I would say that there's going to be little to no weather edge. And I think if anything out there tomorrow, that the AM side might actually be the one that gets that advantage. So that's why I think if you're trying to look too much into the weather for round 2, that you might be going down the wrong rabbit hole. It's just not even that big of a factor to begin with, right? It was, look at this, 0.15 shots now out there from one side versus the other. And by the time that we get to the end of round 1, I think there's a good chance that it's close to even, if not even easier, over there towards the AM wave. So in my personal process, I'm going to have guys on both sides of the tee times. And, I might have slightly more of one side versus the other, but that's going to be because I had more plays that I liked on that side. It's not necessarily going to be because I'm stacking that side out there in lineups. Now, I'm going to be entering about 40, 50 showdown lineups myself. I might take like 5 to 10 and stack them towards either direction, just in case there ends up being that sort of edge. But in a majority of my exposure, 30 to maybe even 35, 40 of those showdown lineups that I'm entering, it's going to be entered without any sort of bias over here from the weather perspective. So obviously check on the tee times if you're trying to lean into that sort of thing. But I would say outside of like those large GBPs, like the big $5, $20 GBPs, that leaning into a 0.2 shot weather edge, 0.1 shot weather edge, like it might be towards the end of the day today, would be galaxy braining it just a little bit too much. So that's what I've got out there from the weather perspective. Of course, this could change as these forecasts have been pretty volatile over the last few days. But as of right now, if we're getting a steady stream of wind, like it looks like as of this current HRRR model, then that's how I'm going to be handling that that side of things. What's going on? Steven says, don't curse your luck with Mitchell, Colin. I've got to say, Steven, we've seen it happen a few times before, right? Out there with Keith Mitchell. And yeah, I hope he keeps it up for your sake, Steven. But those guys like Sam Ryder, there's Brian Harmon's up there at -6. There's a pretty big track record of them coming back to earth, which, speaking of, let's talk about our strategy a little bit over here for round 2 showdown. Round 2 showdown is, I think, one of the best slates of the entire week. I have round 4 showdown probably as number 1. Love myself some main slate out there as well. But round 2 showdown, the edge all comes down to overreactions. We've only had an 18-hole sample size to this point, and the Keith Mitchell remark kind of got me thinking down this kind of road over here. But these guys towards the top, like a Harmon, Mitchell, Ryder, I mean, all these guys starting over here T7 or better are going to be like double the ownership that they should be. And it's all because of how they played over there for Thursday. There's still a consensus, a lot of casual players over there in the industry that think that just because they had a good first round means they're going to go out there and smash for round 2. Now, is it great to see guys going out there and gaining a whole bunch of ball striking stats? Sure, like those guys could go out there and repeat it out there day to day, but I don't think that they're necessarily all that much more likely to do it out there for tomorrow just because they smashed for an 18-hole sample size. Now, when you're heading into an event, we're looking at the last 12, last 24 measured rounds. When it's 3 to 6 events that we're using as a sample size, you can start to take a lot more away from those sort of stats. But when it's literally only been 1/4 of one event that you're looking at out here for a slate, you don't want to fall into those overreactions. It's the same kind of thing that happens after week 1 of the NFL season, right? You have teams that like the Chiefs might lose and everyone's then sky is falling out there for that franchise. It happens every single year. Then oftentimes those teams go out there and they make a deep run into the playoffs, if not actually go out there and win the Super Bowl, like you've seen in a few cases. It's the same thing here, right? You've got guys up here towards the top end of the board, Keith Mitchell being a prime example. And, I hate to pick on my guy Keith because I love him. I play him a lot more than other people in the industry do. But when you take a look at his final results over the last few events, right? He's been first round leader in the last 2 events that he's played in. He finished T18 at Houston. I mean, that's still pretty decent, but he went from first down there to 18th. And at Valspar, he went from first the whole way down to T54. So, just because you have a guy towards the top, right, doesn't mean he's going to smash for round 2. Now, for the sake of any of your guys' of exposure, like I know somebody's on Keith Mitchell themselves down there, I hope they keep it together, right? They shoot something like a solid -1, -2. That's probably more realistic for some of those guys towards the top end of the board. But in showdown purposes, right, we don't want a -1, a -2. We're looking for ceiling performances, guys that are going to be aggressive. They're going to try and make 6-7 birdies that we need out there to be an optimal play. And I would much, much rather take shots further down the board, not only just because they'll be lower owned, as I mentioned, all the chalk going to be on these guys towards the top end of the board, but also because of the mindset difference. If you're somebody that had an average round 1 or even just like a -1, a -2 round, to catch up to these guys at -6, -8, -9 on the leaderboard, you've got to be thinking of making 6-7 birdies. And like I said, in the showdown format over there in DraftKings, where it's all about your birdie production, birdie streaks, maybe a bogey-free round bonus that you go out there and mix in on top of that, you want the guys that are going pin hunting, that aren't scared of kind of going out there and protecting their score. And like I said, the track record of these guys that smashed out there in round number 1 isn't all that favorable out there for the next few days. So guys like Keith, Sam Ryder, Brian Harmon, you're not going to see me playing those sort of players out there in my lineups. I can tell you right now that I'm fading all 3 of them. Haven't even built my player pool yet, but there's no chance I'm going to be on them at that sort of inflated ownership. But even guys like a Jordan Spieth, Novak there at -5, depending how he finishes, he could be one of the more popular players that we have on the slate. Carson Young, Tommy Fleetwood, Mav for sure, I think is going to get some attention out there. These sort of players, unless I'm truly sold on them, they're one of my conviction plays. I love them out there in my process. You're not going to see them out there in my poll. Now, I will say that there's a better chance that maybe one of these -4 studs will go out there and creep themselves in, like maybe a Fleetwood, maybe a McNeely I could take out there in my player pool. But I'm mostly starting at these T11s or worse because of the ownership aspect. And heck, even worse than that, I'd prefer my guys starting outside of the top 20, because even guys like a Burns, a Tony Finau, Finau, I could see getting some attention. Even Yuriko Hoey's of the world, Grillo, Svensson over there at -11, assuming they all finish at that same sort of score, or maybe even better than that -3 kind of score right now. They're the kind of guys that are going to be higher owned than their peers. So in general, I'm looking to avoid a lot of these players towards the top, which is going to really tie in a lot later on when we talk about the lineup construction segment. So we'll talk about ownership, where you can find your leverage out there in lineups. I do mention my strategy out there for Showdown, right, is to avoid a lot of these guys up there towards the top. Just because it's my strategy to avoid all those players doesn't necessarily mean you have to be as aggressive about it. And I take a rather aggressive strategy when it comes to my Showdown exposure. I play in a lot of large field GPPs. I don't play in a lot of single entries. No cash exposure over for me on the Showdown side. Very rarely. If there's a weather edge, I'll play cash lineups just to go out there and leverage that. But from the GPP perspective, I'm looking for those optimal plays, right? I could really give a shit less, right, about a player going out there and laying an egg. I know it's going to happen, especially if I'm entering like the big $5 or $20 GPP. There's a reason why I'm entering 50 lineups to give myself that sort of spread. That's why I'm so focused and so obsessive over a player's chance to go out there and shoot something like -5, -6. So these guys towards the top, it's not like they have a lower chance of going out there and doing so just because they did so today. It's that they don't necessarily have a higher chance of doing so, right? Having a spike round is an outlier performance, however which way you go out there and dice it up, right? There's 140 something players. To be one of the top 6 guys, that is an outlier of all outliers right there, right? You've got to go out there and have the nuts performance out there for any given day. Doing that twice in a row is very difficult, but these guys up here, they're owned twice to 3 times as the guys around them, right? That's the key differentiator there, is that they're not owned like everyone else is. That still has about the same chance as they had for main slate to go out there and be optimal. It's that these guys are going to have all the extra exposure out there. What I am looking for myself would be some ball striking poppers, and preferably guys that weren't playing as well out there with their putting. So you can see guys like a Gary Woodland there at T91. Let me get a sip of the Red Bull in me. Throat was getting dry there, but you can see over there on the 2 right side categories, those would be the around the green and putting categories. He was well into the negative in both of them. So the kind of guy that really hit the ball better than the scorecard would indicate. I mean, you compare him to a player like Buckley that shot -2. He hit the ball better in terms of these 2 categories, yet the scorecard was 3 shots worse because of that around the green and the putting. And if you take a look at Gary Woodland last week, I'll go ahead and bring down the Keith Mitchell tab and open one up over here on Gary Woodland. You see that the putting last week was excellent, right? He gained nearly 9 strokes over here on this same type of grass, also same state. So it's that same type of overseed that you had over there at the Houston Open. He's the kind of guy that you could look for a bounce back in the short game categories. And if he continues to hit the ball like he did today, you can leverage those ball striking stats. And a lot of your top level players that shot -3 or better, the guys like, -6, -8, like your Keith Mitchells, Brian Harmons, they're going to have these good ball striking stats. It's just that you don't have to pay the ownership tax over there. And Gary is going to be lower owned than what he was for main slate because he's down there at T92, which I think makes him a much better play than what you had for that sort of format. A few other players to maybe keep an eye on, be a Chris Kirk, really hit his irons well today. You can see he lost 3 strokes over there with the putter. That is probably unlikely to happen again. Tony Finau also gained across the 2 ball striking categories, but lost over a stroke over there with the putter. Was a little bit lucky around the green, so maybe those kind of offset each other there, but still some solid ball striking stats out there for Big Tone. A little bit further down the board, my guy Thorbjorn Olesen, the Thunder Bear, one of my outright bets. Still on the golf course, so we'll have to see how he finishes up over his last 5 or 6 holes, but currently gaining ball striking, but losing out there with the 2 short game categories. Kind of on brand, but another guy that could be due for a little bit of that regression. Thurston Lawrence, another one of my DP World Tour favorites that we have coming over to this side. It's been a while since we've gotten a good round out of them, but you can see here, right, 2 shots gained over there with the ball striking so far. Still some holes left to play out there for Lawrence, but losing in the 2 short game category. So these sort of players, and these stats will update as they finish the rest of their round, whether that's tonight or potentially even over there tomorrow morning. But these kind of ball striking stats where you've got guys that, and you see in almost every case that we talked about, right, it's not guys starting in the top 20. Now, if you are starting in the top 20 like a Thorbjorn Olesen, we're going to have to see the ownership before I go out there and want to play him in lineups, because if Thorbjorn's going to be 7 to 10% owned as opposed to the 2 to 3% that I got out there in GPP lineups this week, then he's not nearly as good a play, right, as what we had out there for our main slate exposure. So we'll have to see how Thorbjorn finishes. Maybe he bogeys one of his last few holes. Right? It's not like I'm rooting for that, especially with that outright bet exposure that I have on him. But if he finishes like -1 and he's like closer to T40 down here, he probably won't be that kind of chalk over there in lineups. And maybe we can leverage these sort of shots gained metrics. So you look at off the tee on its own, do that same sort of exercise, right? And like I said, you want to try and find some guys a little bit further down the board so that they're not going to be as popular as some of the other players there. Same thing on approach. You could just narrow it down to that category. Ball striking, by the way, just combines off the tee and approach. So that's why we started over there with that. But these short game categories, we also want to consider these. So short game categories are kind of the exact opposite as what we have over there with the ball striking. It's not like these putting stats, like gaining 3 to 5 strokes is necessarily a bad thing. It's just that you can't really count on it happening out there every single day. So if their ball striking held up, they were still positive. Like you can see a lot of these top level putters, they were still really good over there from tee to green. But if you find somebody like a Harry Hall, for example, who lost strokes on approach but gained 3 strokes over there with the putter, then he could be a little bit of a sketchy play over there for round 2 showdown. So if I'm looking for fades, if I'm looking to try and get off of some of the chalk, these players should be the first guys on my list, because I'm not expecting them to go out there and have such good short games again. Unfortunately, my guy Jordan Spieth up there towards the top. So already mentioned that I wouldn't count on him, right? Going out there and having that sort of round in back-to-back days. But even Sam Burns, we know he's one of the better putters out here, loves these greens over here in Texas too. But gaining 3 strokes per round is something that is completely unsustainable. And it's not even just the putting stats. You can do that same exercise around the green. And the reason why we say this, by the way, to give you some of the background on it, is how you're hitting the golf ball. So that's off the tee and approach, how you're driving it, how you're hitting your irons. That is relatively consistent both from round to round and event to event out there on tour. It's why every tout out there in existence, I'm sure you guys have heard it, if you're consuming content like you guys are right now, is obsessive over the ball striking stats, specifically on approach, right? You hear all about shots gained approach. We break it down into specific proximity buckets, right? That's how much it matters. And we break it down into the smallest possible categories that we can. These short game categories, though, are not as consistent out there from event to event. Now, you can't completely overlook them. A player's baseline still averages out to where they're going to be most times out there on tour. However, when you have a spike performance, like what you have here with 2-3 shots gained, these are the categories where you see regression the fastest. Like, for example, we've shown this 1,000 times before on live stream here before. And I'm sure when we go back to the round 3 stuff right out there tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about guys that went from super positive over here in these categories and flipped to super negative out there the next day. And same thing with vice versa, right? There might be guys that lost a whole bunch of strokes around the green out there, round number 1, that gained 2 or 3 strokes out there in round 2. So I'll try and point out a few of those as we see them out there for round number 3. But that's the idea with why we're kind of fading the short game, and we're really looking for guys that played well with the ball striking stats. Let's talk about a few guys up here. So EVR got lucky, Keegan Bradley, Kanaya as well, all guys that gained over 2 strokes in the category. But even guys like Tony Finau, Matteo Manassero, who I got to say, Manassero, look at what he did last week. So Manassero is, when he has this short game regression, it is really going to bite him. I hope it doesn't happen this week, because I took him in a lot of my exposure in lineups. Really fits the style of golf course quite well. But look at last week. He gained 12 strokes short game. So that's an average of, was that 3 strokes per round, a little bit more than that actually per round between those 2 categories. He sure, at this point, he actually finished his round. He gained over 4 strokes out there in that category, but that's actually not all that far different than what he did last week. So he'll be a case study for us. Can Manassero manage to keep this short game going? Because if he can, right, he'd be a massive outlier. We do not see this very often, where like last week, he did it for all 4 rounds. This week, he's starting it once again in those 2 categories. But the reason why we're so mind blown by that is because the exact opposite happens almost every single time. Speaking of the exact opposite, if you take a look at some of the guys that really struggled in these 2 categories, you could be looking for a little bit of a bounce back. So Chris Kirk, who lost about 3 strokes putting, probably not going to happen again. Guys like Gary Woodland, also really ball striking it well. Probably not going to lose like 2.5 strokes putting again. And you don't want to be taking shots on just anyone down here towards the bottom end of the board. But if you can find ball striking stats like what we have here with Jeremy Paul, who you can see is losing. He's still on the golf course now, but losing about 2 strokes putting, but gaining in the 2 ball striking categories. These would be the kind of players I'm looking for in a bounce back, not necessarily your Kevin Kisners that lost off the tee, then also lost about 2 strokes over there with their approach play. And I've got to say, I got to go to the Max Homa thing because this kid is really dealing with some issues. He lost, I guess he's just about to finish his round, 5 strokes approach. This is horrendous. This is beyond a red flag. And it's not even like it's just this event, right? You go back to the last like 10 events out there for Max Homa. It's been negative every single time. And it's been heavily into the negative over here with Max Homa. In fact, the last time he gained strokes on approach was the Century. So a small field event over there to start the year. I am really, really worried about what's happening with Max. And if you guys didn't see the news over there on Twitter, I believe Golf Channel had it covered over there as well. He broke up with his caddy. Griner is no longer on the bag over there for Max Homa, which tells you how big the issues have become over there with his game. So it's he's not going to make the cut most likely. If he does, it would be a heck of a round starting from a +4 right there. Probably have to shoot -5 in those windy conditions to do so. At least probably -4 over there to make the weekend. I don't know what's going to happen with Max. Maybe the new caddy will do him some things. I think he needs a new coach. That would be my suggestion at this point, because this kind of sustained loss on approach, and it's like a stroke per round on an event, right? It's not like he's losing like half a stroke per round. Like a lot of these are close to a stroke, if not over a stroke loss per round. He's got to work on that because it's been the clear issue. Like he's had a few good weeks off the tee. He's had a few decent short game weeks, right, mixed in there as well. He is just bleeding dark red over there with that approach play. And until he fixes that, he's going to be dealing with some issues. Let me catch up on chat, see if there's any specific player deep dives that you guys want. So as we go through questions, if you still have a player deep dive that you want, now's the time to go ahead and throw it down into the chat, because afterwards we're going to talk about some of the contest selection that is available. Also actually putting together a few lineups. So if you have any of that player pool stuff, go ahead and let me know right now. So where we leave off, you've got a killer team going, but you won't hold your breath with Keith. Yeah, that's always the case after round 1. But hey, I'd rather be in first place than last after one day. Great call on Ryder today, Luke. Yeah, he's good in Showdown. On main slate, he's killing it out there too. Shoot, you're late. Can I start over, please? And no, Nick, you know what to do. You can go back. I'm just kidding. I appreciate you, Nick. He said Tom, Kim, or he could. He's an or he could guy, but I would only play him in large field GPPs, right? When you're at that +4, +5, there's only one place to really go out there and do so. Like you're playing in cash, there's no reason to go down and play somebody like that, right? It'd be kind of silly. And then like even in a small field single entry, let's say you're in like a contest with less than a couple hundred entries, it'd probably be pretty silly to play a Tom Kim too. But there's always the or he could factor, especially when it's a guy like Tom Kim, or you're not talking about some slapdick that shot +6 that probably knows he's missing the weekend. You're talking about Tom Kim, who made a quad on his first hole at Wyndham Championship and then went on to win by like 5 strokes. So he's clearly shown us an ability to kind of shake that off. Now, he shook it off real quickly over there in that round over there at the Wyndham, but we'll see what he does tomorrow. He's always an or he could. Woodland could lose 2 strokes putting again. He for sure could, but he did gain about 9 strokes last week. So he could also go out there and gain 2-3 strokes putting. So that's always on the table as well. 21 to 27% ownership on Connors, Akshay, and Denny, with 9% on Ludwig and Finau. Very predictable though, Wayne, right? I think everyone kind of knew that Connors was going to be chalk. I had him at 26% myself. Akshay too. I mean, he won last year. He nearly won the Players. If you didn't think that those guys are going to be mega chalky, then I don't really know what to tell you, Wayne. I avoided those top 2 myself, Connors and Akshay. I did play some Denny McCarthy myself. But yeah, the Ludwig and Finau at low ownership. I didn't play Luddy this week. I did play Tony Finau myself. I feel great about it. I mean, I got sub 7% ownership on a Sam Burns. Even Mav McNeely was at sub 15% ownership, which I was thrilled to see. And Ryan Gerard, this was the real question mark to me this week. And I guess it shows kind of like the overreactions to the ownership sometimes. Ryan Gerard was not that highly owned. At least in the $5 GPP, he was about 13% owned. You had guys like Lee Hodges, like 17, 18%. You had guys like, I forget who else in the 7K range was like even higher owned than that. He was like 18, 19%. Bud Colley in the 8K range was also in that sort of range. Some interesting stuff happened with the ownership this weekend. A lot of it, I'd say, I was glad about. Some guys that were higher owned than I thought would be higher owned that I faded, and some guys that I played were even lower owned than I thought they would be. So some pleasant surprises on my end. How did the iceberg look? Didn't get to watch much golf. So yeah, from the shots gained perspective, let's bring it up here real quickly. I don't think he really stood out that much in any category but off the tee, which is kind of his baseline, right? He's just one of the best drivers in existence, maybe one of the best drivers of all time in the sport. Also was pretty average in the other three categories. So he made 6 birdies. I mean, from the DraftKings perspective, I know the -1 round doesn't look that sexy over there at T39, but he scored a lot better than most of those -1 rounds. So he's always in play, especially for showdown around this kind of golf course. The reason I didn't play him this week kind of ties into why I like him for showdown is I don't think he's an overly good course fit because he's not the best player from 150 yards and in. If you take a look at the iron stats, there are a lot better players out there in this sort of field, but O'Bear can get nuclear hot with the putter. I mean, you've seen him gain 3-4 strokes in a round before. We know that his off the tee play is always going to be excellent. Like you catch a hot putter, a decent iron day, and I mean, we've seen Luddy shoot -8, -9s before out there at harder golf courses than what we have here. I like him on the showdown format because I could see that happening for like one of the 4 rounds. You get him to the weekend, Saturday, Sunday showdown, I'll for sure have him out there in lineups. But for a 4-round sample size, especially like if he's a 10K golfer, probably has to top 3 or win to go out there and get there. That's why I avoided him because I could see him having a down day or two. So it was the off the tee today that was really carrying a Luddy's game, but that's kind of his baseline, so I wouldn't hold it against him, right? You definitely need all the help you can get after your day today. Tell me why Hoagie sucked. Yeah, Nick, you had a terrible day today. I hate to say it. I don't want that to happen to me tomorrow. Let's put it that way. I won't spill the beans on what happened there. If he wants to share it, he can. So Tom Hoagie lost strokes off the tee and then gained over there in the other 3 categories. I think he looks totally fine. Like he's T65, right? He had an average day. Now, I don't know what he's doing on 18, right? His finishing hole over there for round number 1. But this kind of stat profile wouldn't talk me off of him at all. Like when he struggles, sometimes it is off the tee, right? He's not the longest player or the most accurate player in the world. Kind of did his Tom Hoagie stuff today. And if anything, that putter gaining 1.5 strokes putting was a bright spot. He doesn't always gain in that category, but when he gets hot there, a lot of times he can sustain that for a few months at a time. Totally fine stat profile. And yeah, if you're freaking out about somebody at even par, you probably shouldn't be. Dang, 7 birdies, 6 you can count. Yeah, a lot of birdies, Ross. And honestly, like if guys making a lot of birdies and the shots gained metrics don't look all that great, sometimes that's because they had a few holes where they hit some darts and a few holes where they, gave a few shots back. And that's what happened with Luddy, right? You make 6 birdies, you only shoot -1. You had far too many mistakes, right? Out there during your round. That's a good showdown play because if you clean that up, Ross, I mean, he's got the birdie production to shoot -6 right there. I mean, you're probably going to mix in at least a bogey or 2, but you can see the recipe right there. Not surprised the chalk was the chalk. Yep. Just objectively better players should be half to a third of the ownership. Yeah, that's why you got to get some big leverage on those guys, Wayne. I chose to do so with those sort of players. And that's why ownership game theory is such a big deal in DFS, right? If you know that there's better players, they're going to be like half the ownership, then that's why you always take the pivots. And to kind of tie it in over here to round 2 showdown, it's the same exact idea, right? These guys at the top, sure, they're informed. Sure, they have good shots gain metrics, right? No shit, right? That's why they're up there in the top 10 for tomorrow. But should they be double the ownership of everyone else? Absolutely not, right? And for main slate, everything kind of gets reset, right? Heading into a slate, sure, form over the last few events matters. But for round 2 showdown, what I think makes it maybe the biggest edge when it comes to playing game theory of the entire week is that people play it like we have a big sample size to work with, right? Like people assume that this 18-hole sample size, like, sure, we just went through the shots gained metrics. You want to use it to some extent out there in your process. It's not the gospel, right? Just because these guys played well does not mean they're going to do it out there the next day. That is why I love round 2 showdown so much, because these guys towards the top are going to get all that steam, and all you have to do, you don't even have to go down that far. You go down to the guys that were just a little bit better than average, like an Aubert would make perfect sense with that. Cantlay, who shot -1 today. Like these sort of guys compared to your Spieths, your McNeelys, right, that shot those -4, -5 rounds, those sort of players are going to be double the ownership of the guys down here, and they were hardly worse over there for today. And long term, they're the same, if not in some cases, even better players than what you have towards the top end of the board. So yeah, that's one of the fundamentals when it comes to playing DFS, Wayne. And the more and more that you start noticing that sort of stuff, it's good that you notice that right out there with those players to speak, the better and better player that you're going to become, because that's where the edge is out here in DFS. We can try and break down golf courses, handicap players to the best of our ability. That helps. That's how you can generate, an even bigger edge on top of going after the game theory. But the biggest edge over here on DraftKings, FanDuel, sites where you're playing against the rest of the field, is playing against the rest of the field, right? Remember what you're actually trying to accomplish, right? We're not all playing in a pool over here trying to get the perfect lineup, right? That's not what we're doing. We're not doing this for fun against other people, right? Sometimes you got to remind yourself what the hell you're actually trying to accomplish over here in Showdown, guys. We're trying to beat every other person that is watching this piece of content, right? And now not everyone you're playing against, right, is going to be watching this same live stream, but they've got the same exact information that you do. So you'd be crazy not to think about that and use that to your advantage when you're going out there and building lineups. So that's why I'm so stringent on trying to fade a lot of that chalk. And also why I say to just go a little bit further down the leaderboard, because you're talking about marginal changes. It's about better players down here that you're getting at much better numbers. So yeah, hit the nail on the head there, man. And it is crazy that they were a third of that ownership, especially Aubert. Tom Hoagie's best be birdieing 18 if he knows what's good for him. Yeah, I have no idea where he stands, but go ahead and let me know. If Burns can ever get hot with these irons, he can shoot a course record. Yeah, man, I'm glad the putter was hot. We're going to need it to stay hot, I think, for 4 rounds if he's going to have any chance at contending. But yeah, you're spot on with that. I mean, the irons, if you take a look at the last few months for Sam Burns, they just have not been great. I mean, it's been the clear issue for him. If you take a look at the shots gained, Arnold Palmer being the real big culprit. Reason why I almost spat out my drink there is he lost 10 strokes over there on approach. Yeah, find a way to not do that, and he's going to have some good rounds. Hat was up with our boy Fowler today. What was up, you're saying? Just terrible rounds. Pretty much lost across the board. But if you take a look at his scorecard today, it was kind of a tale of two halves. First half, utter dog shit, right? He shot +3 on his first half. Second half, where he shot even par, was really good stuff. I mean, he was hitting fairways. He was hitting a lot of greens regulation. When he hit 5 of his 9 on that side of the golf course. In hole 1, where he made a bogey on that side, was the hardest hole that you had in the entire day. So, I mean, you're just going to get that with players, right, that lose out there across the board, that just wake up without their fastball. I will take shots on these sort of players. These are the classic or he could guys, right? Like a Tom Kim would be that same kind of thing. But I would rather have a Fowler than a Tom Kim personally, because he started really terribly. I mean, literally, like, looks like he woke up on the wrong side of the bed, right? Over there on the back 9. And then on the flip side of things, he kind of figured it out, right? Whether it was a swing thought, figured out what the hell was going wrong in his golf swing. It could be a million different things that he figured out there towards the backside. Tom Kim, right? I know you asked about him before. It was the exact opposite, right? He started off pretty decent, -1 through his first 6 holes, and then just bled strokes the rest of the way in. That doesn't really build all that much confidence. Now, could he figure it out on the range? Sure, right? It's always the or he could out there with those sort of players. But if I'm taking a shot on those sort of guys, give me Ricky Fowler all day over a Tom Kim, just because of the momentum that he showed towards the end. Huge par on 18. Okay. Even par round. I'm totally fine with that. You guys, by the way, I'm not picking on you in general there, Ross, but it's just golf fans out there across the world. Y'all are brutal. You guys never shoot even par, and you're like looking at that as a bad thing. That was a better than average round today, right? If about an average round overall, y'all are something else. You armchair quarterbacks pretending like you've ever shot even par in your life. Hoagie par in 18. Look at Schmid's scorecard. Yeah, I know he was killing it early, right? And then sucked out there towards the end. He had the Tom Kim scorecard. He was -3 through 8 and then finished +1. I mean, just it's this kind of golf course, though. It can get you in a real hurry. Nice Mount Audi call, by the way. Can't believe the yellow ball pulled it off. Don't you be mushing, my guy. You said you had some in Showdown. Okay, so that's why you can say nice call and it's not a mush out there. Okay, you're forgiven for that. He said he went birdies, Luke, actual Eagles. Yeah, me too. But he's got some rounds to go out there and do so for well. Your highest level in golf is a putt-putt. Exactly, Garth. Hey, as long as you know that, right, then it's all good. I made it a little bit further in golf. I've played competitive golf, tournament golf in my career. So that's why I kind of have a soft spot for these tour players. And I try to give them a little bit of leeway because I can empathize with them to a little bit of some extent, not nearly to the same extent as them. I mean, it's another level completely out there on tour, having all those eyes on you, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's maybe my biggest pet peeve out here at PGA DFS is people acting like they could do any better than these tour players out there. Like my favorite's the ones where guys miss like a 15-foot birdie putt, which by the way, on average on tour is made like 30% of the time. And they're like, oh, he missed the 15-foot birdie putt. Like, yeah, that's going to happen 70% of the time to players out there. And for you, that's going to happen 95% of the time when you're on the golf course. So that cracks me up more than anything is the putting, because you play putt-putt, right? And you probably know it's not even that easy to get the ball in the hole. Some of these people you'd swear that they're Tiger Woods or something based on the comments they make about players. Just got in a few minutes ago. We have a wave to favor. So I'm not looking at any sort of weather tomorrow, Mike, at least as of right now. If I'm going to give you the full weather talk, though, I'll just have you go back to the first, maybe 5 minutes of the live stream. I do a full deep dive on it, but the Spark Notes version, it looks like it's just a little bit too flat to go out there and play one side or the other. So I'm going to have players on both sides of it. You've shot -1 for 9 twice. So Wayne, my best round ever. I didn't really want to get to it, but hey, if you're mentioning yours, I guess I'll talk about mine. Best round I've ever shot is a 70. It was -2. So that's for a full set of 18. I've shot -2 on 9 holes twice, and I shot -1 on 9 holes actually about 2 weeks ago. I was going to say a month ago, but it's a little bit less than that. A few weeks ago before my Wednesday live stream. That's about as good as I can play. And all of those under par rounds that I've scored are on the same golf course. It's the golf course that I played for my high school golf that I still live by to this day down here in South Florida. It's a public track down here near me. It's short. It's only like 6,500 yards. So there's a couple determining factors there, right? It's short enough for me to actually score on it. And I've played thousands of rounds there. Like, you could blindfold me on some of the greens, I shit you not, and I can make putts because I know them by memory, some of those greens. 15-foot putts are gimmies for those cats. That's what I mean, bro. And I'm a terrible putter. So the PGA Tour average might be 30% from 15 feet. I make them 15% of the time, like half of that. And I've played tournament golf. Like, I'm not a shitty golfer. I would wax everyone in chat, by the way. That is an open offer. I will play anyone in chat. Actually, I shouldn't say that because we could have some past professionals in chat. I will play like 99% of you down there in chat for money for pretty much whatever you want to play for in golf. So I'm not even just like saying that. Like, I will back it up with money if you guys would like to play the same teams. Got to play the tips if we play. No handicap bullshit. It's just gonna be straight head to head. I'm about a 5 handicap at this point, so you can play off that if you want to. But yeah, 15-foot putts I make like 15% of the time. So like, these people that clown these golfers for not doing it, I'm just like, it just makes me shake my head, man. I don't get it. You don't ever have 15-foot birdie putts. Hey, I didn't say it was for birdie. A lot of times it's for bogey and double for me too. I'm not the best golfer. Lots of predicting rain tomorrow apart from HRRR. Yeah, so let's look at it. I did see that, especially like yesterday. A lot of them had rain on it. NAM, you can see, has a few sprinkles out there in the morning. It's a little bit more clear over here in Medio Blue. Actually, some thunderstorms over there in the morning. Didn't see that on the right side. This one has most of the rain before play. GFS, a little bit of a sprinkle out there towards the morning. Yeah, I'm going to trust HRRR the most on it. But, if we get a curveball out here with maybe the NAM model or this, Medio Blue that had the thunderstorms out there in the morning, then great. And that was actually for Saturday and Friday that they're calling for those thunderstorms. If those hold up, by the way, this forecast over here in Medio Blue, good luck finishing this golf tournament. I mean, that'd probably be a worst case scenario. Ross, no, if there's a woman in chat, by the way, they have to play from the tips too. That applies to everyone. I don't care what you identify as or who you are, you're playing from the tips. Because we could have Lexi Thompson down there in chat. So that's why I gave that disclaimer on like 99% of people who play. you're like Lexi Thompson or something like that, or like a past professional, like, no, obviously not. But like any slapdick that's yelling at guys missing 15 footers for birdie, then sure, I'll play you. Putt, bring it on. Yeah, we could play putt for some fun, Nick. And if you want to put a little money on it, we can do that too. 70's outstanding. I appreciate that. You said, I'll play. Where do I live? I'm in Florida. Come down here, Chris. And you'll have to let me know your handicap. Give me a little bit of background before I would accept your challenge. And I guess I got to know how much I'm playing you for too, because to make it worth it, right? If you're coming down from Chicago, I'm assuming it's at least a couple $1,000s, right? Because you're going to be paying probably at least $1,000 to come down here. So you better start getting that ready, man, because I won't back down from that. I am full game to go out there and do that sort of thing. And trust me, I'm no longer shooting those kind of 70s now. So I'm not that sort of golfer anymore, but I'm still confident enough to play people. Lexi Thompson would kick your ass. Yeah, she would. She would murder every single one of us down here in chat. Unless there's some Corn Fairy guys in here, maybe some semi-professionals who, like, by the way, Chris, if you're one of those people, I will not play you for money. So that's why I'm going to have to know who you are. But let's go through a few things here. So in terms of our contest selection over there for tomorrow, it looks pretty spawned in line with the last few weeks, but it's actually a little bit bigger than what we had for the last two events, which is at least surprising to me, because you would think that this sort of event, which right before the Masters, there's a lot of other sports going on, like March Madness, you've got NBA going on, MLB, of course, which just started up over here. But this sand trap is 25K bigger than what we've had for the last few weeks. So still super top heavy. Not my favorite GPP to go out there and enter, but a slightly bigger prize pool than what we've been seeing for the last few weeks. You still have this $250 4 max, which it looks about the same size as what you had for the last few weeks. So I guess it's not every single contest that is getting that up in size, but you have this long drive over here. So this is what, $100 single entry, still pretty top heavy stuff. So the contest selection could get a little bit better. I think as good as it's going to get would be this $20 long drive here. This is 15% to first place. So you can obviously check that one out there too. But let me see if they have the $10 18 max. That one is the absolute nuts. But they haven't really been posting it very much over here for Showdown. And at least as of my first glance out here through the contest, I didn't see that one posted. So as I've been saying for most of these rounds 2 and 3, try and enter these single entries as much as you can. Like this $12 Albatross has 10% to first. It's a decent payout structure after that as well, out there against just a couple hundred other people. You have the $33 single entries, which are always decent ones, especially for a lot of you guys that are watching this video, right? If you're playing it just as a hobby, having fun over here with your DFS lineups, these are the sort of contests that you should probably be entering, because, you know, if you're only entering a few lineups out there in GPPs, don't be entering just $5 entries out there into big $5, because these are so top heavy, right? You're entering against a ton of other entries, by the way, out there in a lot of these GPPs as well. So let me find the big $5. Where's it at? It was hiding from me. I know it's not. Is it this caddy? No, that's the $5 single entry. Where's the $5 GPP? Do we not have one? That would be wild if they didn't post a $5 GPP out here for tomorrow, because unless I'm blind, I don't think I've seen one yet. I could just be blind. That is always the case over here. If you guys haven't noticed, I don't have the best eyesight. I wear contacts, and I guess I'm just a little bit ADHD as well sometimes. So I'm not always able to see things on here the first time. And yeah, I mean, I went through it twice now, actually 3 times out there throughout the entire list. And I don't see a $5 GPP. Now, can I sort it over here? So can we go to tournaments? Field size, we can make that 1,000 plus, right? It's only going to show the large ones. So there's the caddy that I was talking about. Then yeah, there's no $5 GPP out there for tomorrow. So that is sub-ideal to say the least. I mean, that's normally the GPP that I go out there and enter. Now they have the short game. This is a $1 20 max that you could go out there and enter, but this is the first time I have ever seen them go without it. In fact, let me refresh this to see if maybe they posted it after the fact or something like that, because that is extremely rare. And yeah, after refreshing it, it doesn't look like it's showing up. Did they post it for like late round 2 or something? So did they do this incorrectly or something? So they have the $5 GPP posted, but this is for late round 2. And I mean, 15K is, yeah, maybe a little bit smaller than what they normally do out here for Showdown, but to not have it for the main slate, but to have it over here for the late slate over there for Valero is I don't know. I'm thoroughly confused, as you guys can probably tell right there. So not sure what to make of that from DraftKings. They've ruined really any sort of GPPs. You work for airlines, so it's free flights. Okay, there you go. That's always the good hookup there, Chris. Could I beat Homa? No. But I'd like to think I could on approach at least. Like, at least compared to his -5 shots gained approach today. Like, maybe on my best day ever, I could lose only like 4 strokes in a PGA Tour field in that category. Let me caddy for me next time I teed up with Luke Clanton. Absolutely, Ross. I don't know if you're from Florida, but I'll let you know, man. That'd be a good giveaway I could do, Ross, actually. Maybe not guarantee it to you, but do it for somebody down there in chat. This ain't no hobby, no $5 GPP and no $10 18 max. I'm just going to say I'm disappointed, DraftKings, but I'm not that surprised that they're going to give us these shitty contests. But hey, dwelling over it, complaining about it is not going to do us any good. So let's just take advantage of what we can. And just to go back to what I was saying before on that, if I'm not going to have that sort of contest to go out there and enter, it's going to be all single entries for me. So like that $20, that 20K long drive for sure is going to get an entry for me tomorrow. I'll probably even enter like the smaller $100 single entries that they have out there. And then I don't always enter like the $33 single entries, the $12, the $5 caddy that you saw on the board there too. But because there's nothing else to enter, I probably will enter those sort of contests. So maybe we'll get surprised with some extra contests posted here at some point. But yeah, that's our unfortunate reality out there for round 2 showdown. In terms of actually building lineups, my main concern just really comes down to ownership. I'm just trying to make sure that I have enough leverage in my lineups to actually move up in these GPPs. And the main thing that you want to avoid over there in your lineups is having more than maybe one piece of chalk. And for main slate, sometimes I say you can get away with 2, maybe even 3 relatively popular guys out there in the lineup. But in round 2 showdown, where you have all those overreactions after an 18-hole sample size, I try and push the envelope a little bit more. Now, just because I'm super aggressive about it, right, doesn't have to be exactly how you play yourself. Maybe you're slightly less aggressive and you still have like 2 chalky guys out there in some lineups. But when you start playing like 3, God forbid, 4 chalky guys out there for a lineup and showdown is where you're just building the completely wrong way, especially out here for round 2, where you only have 1 round of actual data to work with. You almost want to reset all of these guys out there to their baselines heading in and play it like you had no idea what happened out there for today. So for example, up top, you're going to see a lot of people play guys like Fleetwood. I would rather go down here and maybe start with a Cantlay, who is cheaper and he's going to be lower owned than some of the guys around him. Also, rather than taking a Spieth, who's over there at -5, that's where a McCarthy, a Bradley, who still had solid rounds, right? T40 is nothing to scoff at out there from a scoring perspective, but they're going to be lower owned than all these other guys around them, like a Berger, definitely lower owned than guys like a Mitchell or a Colley that shot better rounds. So let's throw in Denny McCarthy as our second man in there. Third man in. Now, you could still have some ownership. So let's say that you really like a Burns and you want to play him out there for tomorrow. You could probably get away with that over there at that sort of price. But like even a Ben Griffin, right? I think he'll probably be at least 10% ownership, if not closer to 12 to 15% over there for tomorrow. Your fourth man in here, we're always thinking about that leverage. So maybe even a Ryan Gerard that you throw in, who really good play heading into the week. Kind of spun his wheels out there, but that's just going to give us even lower ownership out there for round 2 showdown. And if you were somebody like me that liked Gerard heading into this week, you should love him tomorrow at lower ownership and showdown. That's for sure. If you were in that camp like I was. And then for your last 2 spots here, I mean, you've already got a leverage piece in, Griffin, Gerard, right? Those were, I would call classic leverage pieces, but like Cantlay, McCarthy, they're not mega chalk on this sort of slate. So as long as your last 2 players here aren't mega chalky for both of them, you'd be totally fine. In fact, just to show you what you can kind of get away with, let's throw in McNeely here. So let's say that he's your one guy that you're really going to indulge on when it comes to taking some chalk, somebody that you just can't avoid. Right after the kind of form that they had for today, which I would kind of push back on that. There shouldn't be anyone out there that you just quote unquote can't avoid out there in your exposure. But let's say for some reason that you have a fixation on wanting to play Matt McNeely for some odd reason or something like that. Well, as long as your last man in here, right, is another pivot and really only have the one piece of quote unquote chalk out there in this sort of lineup, you probably get away with it in any contest that you enter. Now, if you're in the big $5 GPP or $20, I guess for tomorrow, it's only the big $20, right, that you have to actually go out there and choose from. If you're entering the big $20 GPP, maybe you want to avoid like a Smalley as your last man in, because, or maybe even a Novak too, because they're going to be a little bit more popular than some of the other guys around them. But if you finished off with a Perez, a Kitayama down there, if you left salary on the table and avoided a Sam Ryder and really took anyone but him or a Brian Harman down there at $7,300, you'd be totally fine over there in that $20 GPP. So, single entries, you can get away with a little bit more. Some of the smaller field GPPs, you can get away with a little bit more ownership as well. But just because you can get away with playing some ownership does not mean that it's the best idea. For example, rather than playing a McNeely, I'd rather have Gary Woodland all day. Woodland hit the ball better with his ball striking stats, and he's due for some short game regression. So that's personally how I build my lineups. At most, really one chalky guy out there per lineup. And in most cases, and I know it's going to sound wild, but it's true, 0 chalky guys per lineup out there in round 2 showdown. Now, if you're a part of my Patreon page, if you guys have seen my projections that I'm posting for every single slate, you guys will know just how pivot heavy I get out there for rounds 2 and 3. When you don't have placement points, I feel like people forget about that, right? They don't really incorporate that into their process, and they're playing far too many popular players out there in these sort of slates. So that's all I've got over there from the lineup construction segment, giving you a little bit of a peek into my process when it comes to actually building lineups. We'll go over any last second questions that you guys have down in the chat, but that's really all over here for the round 2 process. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe over here to the SHIPIT Nation YouTube channel so you guys don't miss any of the content over the weekend. That, of course, will include our rounds 3 and 4 streams over here on the SHIPIT Nation channel, but also the prop and betting live streams that I do over there on my channel. So that would be on LukeDFS. If you guys see that over there on YouTube, if you haven't already subscribed over there, I'd highly recommend you do so as well, because I know a lot of you guys enter DFS lineups, hence why you're watching this piece of content. But if you also bet on sites like Underdog and Prize Picks, matchup bets over there for any given round on sports books like DraftKings, that kind of thing, we cover all of that over there on that live stream. So obviously you'd like to keep them separate so that people can find the kind of content that they're looking for, right? You don't have to sit through an entire DFS live stream to go out there and get some prop advice out there towards the end. That's how I used to do it. I used to split it down the middle, right? Do DFS first and then do the prop and betting stuff afterwards. Now it's just a little bit better ease of access out there to everyone else out there. So make sure to stay tuned for all of those live streams throughout the weekend if that's something that you guys are doing, as well as, of course, for the rounds 3 and 4 live streams over here on SHIPIT Nation. So where do we leave off? Oh, you're a 21 handicap. It'd be a lot of fun, though, Chris. Actually, if you're a 21 handicap, I would give you strokes. Like I wouldn't make you play head-to-head, right? That would not be fair. I'm truly like a 5. I should be closer to a 3 or a 4 handicap, but I'm playing closer to a 5, 5.5 right now. We'd be giving you strokes. We'd have to figure it out. Maybe we'd have to play a couple holes for me to see kind of how you're measuring up. Don't sandbag me though, right? Over those couple holes, and we'll figure it out. But it'd be a lot of fun. I'm all for it, by the way. If you get down here to South Florida, I'm from about Fort Lauderdale. That'd be the closest airport that you'd probably fly into. I don't know what airline you work with, but if you're down here, I shit you not, I'll get us out into a golf course for free and we can play for fun. It doesn't even have to be for gambling. We can do it and just have a good time. So, and then our offer extends to anyone, by the way, that we're good with in chat. If you're a hater, somebody I don't like, I'm not going to take you golfing for free. But if you're shooting the shit with me like this Chris guy, then absolutely we can. What's going on, Garths? It could be worse. Could be playing on FanDuel. Yeah, RIP to any FanDuel Showdown players at this point. I don't even know if they post Showdown contests anymore, do they? You feel like Power, Woodlands, Bradley, and Kirk are the core plays? I'm with you on Kirk, little bounce back putter there. Bradley, low owned, little bounce back putter out there on Woodland too. Let me look at Power. Actually, let's look at Keegan Bradley's shots gained metrics too. Bradley, a little too lucky around the green for maybe me to call him a core play, but let's look at Seamus Power. Definitely with you on Kirk and Woodland there. And then, Seamus gaining tee to green, then losing 2 strokes of the putter. That's a sharp core for me. And heck, if you have a lean over there on Keegan Bradley, then play him too. I'm all for that. The $250 4 max. Yeah, kind of thinking about it, Nick, that if I'm going to get my usual amount of exposure, like I usually play more money-wise than what I'm planning on playing for tomorrow, that's where I would add lineups. I will say that's still a little top heavy. I believe it was 25% out there to first place. I'd much rather it be closer to like 20% at the very most out there to first, but I guess that's me being a little bit nitpicky. Is there no $20 milli maker next week? I'm not sure, Phil. There might not be, but there's a bunch of other ones posted there. I believe there's a $100 Millie Maker and some other bigger ones out there too. Throw Fowler's crumb ass in there. He needs to win this, so he has to shoot -9 tomorrow. I don't know if I could say that like he's likely going to make the cut or go out there and win this sort of event, but he's an or he could guy, and I'd rather have him than Tom Kim. Like I know that's the comparison that we made a few times, but it's true. Like the guy that's trending well versus the guy that's trending downwards. That's an age-old conversation, and I think you guys know what side I'm on that. You said he missed the first 30 minutes. I'll be favoring AM or PM guys tomorrow. I wouldn't really lean one way or the other. Like, so if you were here earlier, my take on the weather is that it looks too flat to really go out there and parse one way or the other. So yeah, if you want to go back and get the full take on it, you can towards the beginning, Brian. Probably about 3 minutes in is when I start talking about the weather, but it looks pretty flat to me. So you shouldn't fret as much when you like a lot of low-owned plays. You worry sometimes. Not at all, Sean. And I'll say a couple things. Main slate, maybe, because main slate, you don't want to have all 6 pivots. Like if your main slate lineup is all 6 guys that are sub 5%, if you love those 6 players, then play them. That's totally fine. But if you have 6 guys that are sub 5% in a large field like main slate lineup, you're probably getting too cute with it. The reason I say that is you've got to spend your salary, right? You're paying at least probably 3 guys that are 8K plus in any sort of main slate lineup. If you have 3 guys all up there that have no ownership, then you're just taking guys that all don't have any form. Now, for Showdown, it's a little bit different, right? When it's only an 18-hole sample size, I could see those guys going off and having themselves a day, right? For example, that's why I think guys like O'Bear are really good Showdown plays this week, because for 18-hole sample size, I could see him going out there and crushing it. However, for the entire events, the guys that are good plays tend to funnel towards the top end of the board. So yeah, man, for Showdown especially, like if you have a bunch of low-end guys that you like, then roll them out there. That is totally fine. And especially if it's like in the big lottery sort of contests, then even more so the case. Single entry, kind of like the main slate stuff, you might be getting a little bit too cute about it, but definitely not in those large field GPPs. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got out there for the round 2 stream. Best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are going to be getting to. Hope to see a lot of your names up there towards the top of those GPPs. For all the prop and betting stuff, like I said, make sure to check out my live stream a little bit later on tonight. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and get notified when I go live that way, or follow me on Twitter/X, and I'll be putting out an announcement when I'll be doing that as well. So best of luck, as I mentioned before. Hope to see a few of you guys over there on the stream later tonight and out there for the round 3 and 4 live streams out there throughout the weekend.